Good morning.
Good morning.
A child's aim when learning its mother tongue is to speak it fluently. This also applies to students in a class using the natural approach. The natural approach method was created by Tracy Terrell and Stephen Krashen based on Krashen's language acquisition theory. This method focuses more on communication skills without any grammatical analysis, drilling, and basically disregards the use of perfect grammar. It is similar to how a baby picks up their first language.
What okay picture?
In the phone.
No, I want the picture, the another one.
You want to have the picture there?
Yes.
Okay, then one day we'll go to the studio. You give your picture from the phone, and we ask them to print. Okay?
In the common household usage, a unique conversation takes place between a parent and a child from a very young age. For instance, a mother could say, "Look at mommy." The infant's face would turn in the direction of the voice and the mother would exclaim, "She's looking at me." The inventor of the total physical response method, Dr. James Asher, terms this as a language-body conversation, because the parent speaks and the infant responds with actions, such as looking, smiling, reaching, and so forth. This continues for many, many months before the child can actually utter a comprehensible sentence. Despite that, he or she is still silently processing a map of how the language works. When they have deciphered enough of the target language, speaking will emerge naturally. A beginner's speech will not be perfect, but gradually, with time and more activities, it will grow more and more that of a native speaker. Do you want to feed the fish?
Yes.
Cannot.
Fish is hungry.
No.
It's hungry.
Go lah, take the food. Feed the fish.
I don't know where.
You don't know where it is?
Yeah, it's not there. Did you take it? I quit the insect.
You're afraid of the insect?
In this case, this child has gotten through the silent phase and decoded in love of the language in order to speak it. It's not entirely perfect, but he understands what is being said to him and understands how to respond to it. He can understand and react to go take fish food, and he knows how to explain that he is scared of insects. This is the product of a repetitive routines in his everyday life. This is what the natural approach method is trying to imitate in classrooms. Okay, so it can be used for children growing up. That's great, but how do this work in class exactly? Well, there are 3 stages.
Hey you, come here. I want to tell you something. So there are 3 stages. And the first stage is the pre-production stage, which is the development of listening comprehension skills. In this stage, which some also call the silent period, learners are not required to speak. Comprehensible input is heavily relied on and encouraged by teachers in order to trigger the development of oral production. The learners will only listen and process the language. The second stage, the early production stage, where students struggle and perform errors when learning the language. Here, the students have understood a little bit about the language and have started speaking. The teacher focuses on meaningful conversation here and does not make a point of correcting errors. The students are allowed to speak freely and get their point across without worrying about correct form. And third, the last stage is the extending production. The last stage is where more complex activities are carried, such as games, role plays, open-ended dialogues, discussions, and etc. to promote fluency. Here, the students have managed to be comfortable with the language and can speak with intention.
The natural method is aimed to achieve competence in personal communication, meaning daily situations such as conversations, questions, directions, and so on. Therefore, in classes, it is best to not depend on the native for first language, use visual aids to aid comprehension, mix in a wide range of vocabulary, center the activity around meaningful conversations, and prioritize comprehensive input. Activities can be developed through comprehension-based approaches such as TPR.
TPR was originated by Dr. James J. Ashes and has been successfully used in thousands of classrooms with children and adults learning foreign languages, such as Chinese, Arabic, Portuguese, and more. Similar to the natural approach, it is based a lot of questions, second language acquisition, where it benefits greatly from a silent period, where students learn to understand and respond to parts of the language without attempting to speak it. This reflects babies learning their mother tongue, allowing students to acquire vocabulary comparable to how a child learning his or her first language. So the various actions had behind this approach are:
The first thing is that memory is enhanced through association with physical movement. When a child does a certain action and follows that up with a command or response, it is easier to process. As a particular action is associated with each vocabulary word or phrase, students rapidly acquire language while establishing lasting association between the brain and the muscles. Secondly, it is also closely associated with theories of mother tongue language acquisition. In very young children, where they respond physically to parental comments such as pick it up and put it down. TPR as an approach is based first and foremost on listening, and this is linked to physical activities, which are designed to strengthen comprehension. The final one is that TPR is also constructed on the premise that the human brain has a biological program for acquiring any natural language on Earth. The process is visible when we observe how babies internalize their first language. In a total physical response approach lesson, teachers model actions which students mimic as they simultaneously process vocabulary and commands in the target language. As a particular action is associated with a vocabulary word or phrase, students naturally understand and can insert meanings to the words and actions they perform. A typical TPR activity contains instructions such as walk to the window, open the window, stand up, give your book to me. The students are then required to carry out the instructions by physically performing the activities. We'll show you a demonstration right here.
Aris. Okay, Aris.
Zai, ada apa?
Weh, Aris, boleh tak tolong ajar aku bahasa Inggeris?
Boleh je. Alright. So, this is hungry. Hungry. What are you feeling right now?
Hungry.
And this is eating. Eating. Yum, yum, yum. So what do you want to do?
Eat.
And now that you're done eating, you're full. So after you're done eating, you are?
Full.
Okay, now that we're done with the lesson, we need to say bye-bye. Okay, Zahi, now I want to go back to sleep. What do you say?
Bye-bye. Good night.
You see, there are no method or approach that is entirely perfect or ideal. This includes both the natural approach method and TPR. There are still some issues. From a purely practical point of view, it is highly unlikely that even the most accomplished and inventive teachers could sustain a lesson involving only commands and physical responses before the activity becomes repetitious. It is quite difficult to see how this approach could extend beyond beginner level. Another controversial aspect is the silent period, where we leave it up to the students to wait for speech to emerge. Time constraints in classes pose a difficult problem, and even then, transitioning from the silent period to oral production might be workable in a small group of learners, but it would definitely be challenging to manage if applied to a class of 30 students with different proficiencies.
Total physical response activities, used sensibly and integrated with other methods and techniques, can be both highly motivating and purposeful. Many learners respond well to kinesthetic activities. They can serve as a memory aid. On another note, most teachers and researchers agree that we are all too prone to insist that learners speak immediately. So we can learn from the natural approach that while students grow accustomed to the language, their silence is actually beneficial. Through TPR and other comprehension-based inputs, and given a supportive classroom environment, there is little doubt that activities based off of these approaches can be both motivating and fun.